Hi, I'm Mina.
And I'm Yules.
Thanks for tuning in to Artificially Informed.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take the biggest, most critical stories from all over the globe, science, geopolitics, technology, and really try to distill them down into what you need to know.
It's sort of a shortcut to being well-informed.
Exactly. And our sources this week, they're all over the map. We're looking at everything from dense medical journals to leaked defense ministry reports. And the picture they paint it's one of just breathtaking acceleration, but also, deeply entrenched global friction.
That collision is really the heart of what we're talking about today. We're trying to synthesize these huge fundamental shifts. On one hand, you have this incredible potential for human achievement, things like extending lifespan or building a quantum internet.
Right.
But on the other hand, it feels like that potential is constantly being, undermined by our enduring human volatility, economic stress, deep political conflict, these intense rivalries playing out in space and on the ground.
The tension is absolutely palpable. And we're going to be grappling with some massive ethical questions today. We have to talk about NASA's controversial renomination of a billionaire entrepreneur, Jared Isaacman, to lead the agency.
Which is a move that just fundamentally changes the whole conversation around space commercialization.
It really does. And we'll also be looking at the scientific tightrope involved in creating what some researchers are calling emotional AI. We're talking about systems designed not just to compute, but potentially to feel.
And we can't ignore the stark realities of that global friction. We have to confront the aggressive military rhetoric coming out around President Donald Trump's confirmation of imminent military strikes inside Venezuela.
Yeah, targeting alleged narco-terrorists in the Caribbean.
We really need to unpack the legal, the moral complexity of those actions and the intense international scrutiny they're already generating. So let's not wait.
Let's dive right in. Let's start in the lab, where some of these discoveries are truly rewriting our biological blueprints.
Sounds good.
So when we talk about the brain, mental health, the paradigm for decades has just been complexity. The established theory held that psychiatric illnesses, like depression or schizophrenia, they were multisystemic.
Right, a mix of everything.
A combination of hundreds of minor genetic risk factors, plus your environment, your lifestyle, trauma. But now we have a major finding that fundamentally challenges that entire model.
It's a huge deal. We're talking about the identification of the Gerene N2A gene. And this research, it's demonstrated that Gerene 2A is the first single gene that has been proven to directly cause mental illness.
So not just a risk factor, it's a direct cause.
Exactly. It's not just another piece of the puzzle, it's a causal mechanism.
Okay, so why is that distinction so crucial? Why has the multisystemic model been the default for so long? And how does this new finding change things like research funding?
Well, the old model was really driven by frustration, in a way. When you're looking for single causes in these incredibly complex diseases and all you're finding are these weak correlations, you kind of default to that environment plus gene interaction model. It's the only thing that makes sense of the data.
You work with what you've got.
You work with what you've got. Finding a single direct causal link, like with GRAN2A, it means we can now move past just searching for these broad correlations and start identifying specific, targetable biological defects.
So it's about precision.
It's all about precision.
Yeah.
The research shows that specific variants of this gene can cause psychiatric symptoms to manifest very, very early in life, often in childhood. And this just blows the doors wide open for precision medicine and mental health.
So instead of a broad spectrum drug.
Instead of using these broad spectrum medications that kind of affect the entire brain's chemistry, we can now theoretically design treatments tailored specifically to the defect caused by that one GRN2A variant. This is, it's transformative for diagnostics and, maybe more importantly, for getting investment in new drug development.
That is a staggering shift. Moving from, the complexity of diseases to our fundamental structure, scientists have also identified a kind of structural vulnerability in the very core of our DNA. It almost sounds like a design flaw.
It is a bit unsettling, but from a scientific perspective, it's absolutely fascinating. Researchers have uncovered a weak spot that's been overlooked for a long time, and it's sitting right at the beginning, the first 100 base pairs of our genes.
The first 100.
Yep. And this specific segment is highly prone to acquiring what are called mosaic mutations.
Can you explain that a bit more? What is a mosaic mutation? How's that different from, a standard inherited one?
Sure. So a standard mutation is something you inherit from a parent. and it's present in every single cell in your body. A mosaic mutation is different. It happens spontaneously, often during the earliest stages of embryonic development.
So it's not from your parents.
It's not from your parents, and it means only a subset of your cells end up carrying that mutation. The affected cells are patchy, kind of like a mosaic tile pattern.
And I imagine because these mutations only affect some cells, they can probably evade detection in standard genetic screens, but they could still carry a pretty significant risk, right?
That's exactly the problem. These errors, even though they're localized, are now being linked to potential inherited risks for several severe diseases, including certain types of cancer and a range of neurological disorders. Understanding this genetic soft belly, this hypervulnerable 100 base pair region, is absolutely essential for developing ultra-early detection tools and, maybe even intervention strategies, perhaps before birth.
Okay. Moving to something a bit more actionable for, our daily lives. There's some really compelling new research linking our physical health directly to our cognitive longevity.
Yeah, this study provides powerful, quantifiable support for something we've kind of intuitively known, the connection between body composition and brain health. It specifically links greater muscle mass and, on the flip side, less body fat to having a potentially younger, sharper brain.
What's the mechanism they think is at play here?
Well, it's believed to be twofold. First, you have improved metabolic function, which just means your brain is being supplied with better, more efficient energy. Second, and this is maybe the bigger one, is reduced systemic inflammation.
Inflammation. That comes up a lot.
It's a huge factor in aging. Chronic inflammation is known to damage neurons, and muscle mass actually acts as a kind of metabolic sink, improving the body's overall inflammatory status. So more muscle, less inflammation, happier brain.
Okay, now let's talk about something truly radical, an intervention. I mean, this is about extending lifespan itself. This next discovery about boosting the lifespan of elderly mice by over 70%. That's one of those headlines that just stops you in your tracks.
It is genuinely monumental. The study achieved this lifespan extension in elderly male mice using a combination therapy. Oxytocin, which is often called the love hormone, and something called an ALK5 inhibitor. We can call the combo OT plus A5I.
OT plus A5I. And what does it do?
This approach targets age-related decline by effectively reversing the expression of thousands of genes that are associated with aging. It essentially restored youthful protein patterns in the blood and led to the significant revitalization of muscle strength.
70% is just extraordinary. But we have to talk about the catch here, the profound difference between the results for male and female mice.
And that is the critical nuance. The researchers observed a stark sexual dimorphism. It's a huge difference. While the elderly male mice got this incredible 70+% lifespan boost, the female mice, they only received temporary transient benefits.
So it just didn't last for them.
It didn't. And this really highlights how fundamentally different the aging processes can be in male and female mammals. It strongly suggests that a one-size-fits-all approach to longevity is probably biologically inaccurate.
But the exciting part here, I guess, for clinical research is that both of these components are already available, right?
That's the key. Both oxytocin and various ALK5 inhibitors are already clinically available for human use in other contexts. This means the pathway to human trials is potentially much, much faster than if they had to develop a completely novel compound from scratch.
Shifting from longevity to more immediate relief, we have some good news regarding a rapid treatment for severe depression that's moving through trials.
That's the phase 2 trial using low-dose nitrous oxide, laughing gas. It has demonstrated really remarkable success in treating severe treatment-resistant depression.
And the big advantage here is speed.
It's all about the rapid onset of relief. Traditional antidepressants, like SSRIs, they often take 4 to 6 weeks to build up to therapeutic levels in the brain. But nitrous oxide appears to modulate a neurotransmitter called glutamate very, very quickly. This could be transformative for managing severe depressive crises or for patients who just haven't responded to conventional treatments.
And then there's the beautiful, sort of unexpected side of drug repurposing. A common constipation drug is now proving effective against chronic kidney disease, or CKD.
This one is fascinating. The drug is called lubiprostone, and in a phase 2 trial, it significantly slowed the decline of kidney function in patients with CKD. And the mechanism has absolutely nothing to do with its intended use as a laxative.
Which is based on fluid secretion, right?
Right. Instead, it seems to leverage the power of what scientists are calling the gut-kidney axis.
The gut-kidney axis. That sounds like a concept that needs a little unpacking.
Yeah, so essentially the health of your gut microbiome, the trillions of bacteria living in your gut, directly impacts the health of your kidneys. It's a two-way street. Lubiprostone is believed to enhance gut health, and crucially, it also seems to boost mitochondrial activity, the powerhouses of our cells, directly in the kidney tissues.
So it's giving the kidney cells an energy boost.
A huge metabolic boost.
Yeah.
And that confers significant protection against the kind of chronic damage that leads to kidney failure. It's also linked to an increased production of anti-inflammatory compounds like spermidine. I mean, this finding could completely rewrite potential treatment strategies for CKD, focusing on your internal ecological balance rather than just direct renal intervention.
It's amazing. Okay, we'll wrap up the science segment with a quick trip into deep time and the remarkable persistence of ancient life. We're talking about the oldest nervous system ever found.
This is a stunning archaeological find. It comes from the famous Burgess Shale in the Canadian Rockies. Researchers found a fossilized Morella arthropod, a creature from over 500 million years ago, where its brain and nervous system were just remarkably preserved.
That's incredible. Soft tissues almost never fossilize.
Almost never. So this exceptional preservation allows scientists to study the actual structure of this ancient nervous system and better understand the evolutionary transition to complex life forms during the Cambrian explosion. That's the period when most major animal groups first appeared on Earth.
And finally, a really cool example of how evolution embeds these complex survival strategies in social creatures.
We're talking about ants and their incredible disease management protocols. Researchers found that highly infected ant pupae, the ones that are basically too sick to recover, start to emit a specific chemical scent. It's like a distress signal.
A chemical cry for help. Or not help in this case.
Exactly. This signal triggers the worker ants to perform what is essentially emergency euthanasia and disinfection. They open the cocoons and treat the sick pupa with formic acid, a really harsh measure, to prevent the pathogen from spreading and to save the rest of the colony.
It's a cold, calculated chemical decision for the greater good of the superorganism.
A tough evolutionary calculus, for sure.
And just to close out the science section, there was one more study reinforcing a pretty fundamental theory about the very beginning of life on Earth.
Yes, this was about the hypothesis that lightning played a significant role in catalyzing the necessary chemical reactions for life's origins. The idea is that in the early Earth's atmosphere, lightning provided the intense, localized energy needed to break apart simple atmospheric gases and form the complex organic molecules that served as life's building blocks.
So it's another piece of evidence for that primordial soup getting a jolt of energy.
Exactly. It's a compelling reinforcement of the idea that these extreme natural forces were absolutely integral to our existence.
Right, from the origins of life to the future of humanity in space. Let's make that jump. The policies and the leadership decisions being made right now are going to determine who leads the next generation of exploration. And the controversy around NASA's leadership is intense.
It really is. The U.S. Senate is, once again, holding a hearing to evaluate the renomination of the billionaire entrepreneur Jared Isaacman to be the head of NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration.
And this isn't just a political appointment, is it? It feels more like a philosophical statement about what NASA should be.
It absolutely is. I mean, Isaacman is best known for founding Shift4 Payments and, of course, for funding and commanding SpaceX's all-civilian Inspiration 4 mission. His supporters argue that his venture capitalist mindset and his very close ties to commercial space entities like SpaceX are exactly what NASA needs to innovate faster, cut costs, and accelerate its timeline for getting back to the moon and onto Mars.
But the critics are extremely vocal, and they're specifically citing the immense potential for conflicts of interest.
And that's the absolute crux of the controversy. Critics, especially in the Senate, are arguing that installing a figure whose entire career and vast wealth are inextricably linked to commercial space, particularly SpaceX, which holds these massive government contracts for the Artemis program and for resupplying the International Space Station, it just blurs the line between public interest and private profit.
The question becomes, how can the head of NASA impartially award contracts when his own commercial partners are the main ones bidding for them?
Precisely. This hearing is really about that. Everyone is watching to see if his vision, which clearly prioritizes commercialization, ultimately undermines NASA's traditional role as a scientific research and exploratory agency that's driven by the public good, not by shareholder value.
It's really interesting to contrast the financial scrutiny and political tension at NASA with the financial health of their European counterpart.
Yeah, we saw a really strong counter-narrative coming out of Europe. The European Space Agency, or ESA, just secured a substantial budget increase. This is really positioning Europe to take a significant leadership role, particularly in space science and in global climate defense initiatives.
So while NASA is fighting for every dollar.
Right, while NASA is struggling with these tight budget allocations that force really difficult choices about which missions to prioritize, the ESA's infusion of funds signals this aggressive commitment from European nations to maintain their own autonomy and to push forward with collaborative innovation in orbit.
Meanwhile, the heightened geopolitical tensions that we were talking about earlier are already manifesting in space security protocols. We have two very alarming stories concerning Russia.
The first involves a veteran Russian cosmonaut, Oleg Artemyev. He was removed from the Crew 12 mission for violating national security rules. And this is really indicative of how sensitive and, frankly, how restrictive space collaboration has become, even among professionals who have trained together for years.
So the politics on Earth are directly impacting the trust in orbit.
They are. It confirms that the political rift on the ground is making operations in low Earth orbit significantly riskier and more complicated.
And the second story.
Yeah.
If this is confirmed, it would be a massive blow to Russia's manned space capabilities.
It would be huge. There are reports alleging that Russia may have accidentally destroyed its only launch pad capable of supporting human spaceflights. This supposedly happened during a recent Soyuz launch attempt.
Destroy their only one.
There are only one for human flights. Now, the full details are still being investigated. It's a bit murky. But if this is true, it dramatically curtails Russia's ability to launch its own crews domestically. They would have to rely solely on shared facilities or partners. This incident underscores not just the risks inherent in space technology, but also the fragility of some of this legacy space infrastructure, especially when it's under economic pressure.
Okay, let's turn now to the future of space infrastructure. NASA is clearly committed to foundational robotic technology for long-term survival in space.
You can really see that commitment in the planned 2027 Fly Foundational Robots mission. This mission is set to demonstrate a commercial robotic arm developed by a company called Motive Space Systems. And this technology isn't just for show. It is absolutely crucial for the next phase of human exploration.
So think of it as the ultimate space construction worker.
That's a perfect way to put it. This arm will be required for autonomous tool use, for the kind of dexterous manipulation you need for repairing habitats, for refueling spacecraft far from Earth, and for assembling deep space infrastructure. It is absolutely foundational to creating a sustainable space economy and maintaining a presence on the moon and eventually beyond.
And of course, sending humans back to the moon requires a level of safety protocol that goes far, far beyond anything that was developed even for the International Space Station, or ISS.
Oh, absolutely. NASA is conducting these extensive preparations for the Artemis missions. This includes detailed underwater simulations to mimic the reduced gravity environment on the moon, but crucially, they've implemented something called Hazardous Material Summary Tables, or HMSTs.
What are those exactly?
These tables are a comprehensive registry. They're designed to manage every single toxicological, risk chemical, biological flammability of every material used in the crewed spacecraft and habitats. It's an obsessive, almost paranoid level of risk management to ensure that nothing inside the capsule or the habitat poses a threat to the crew over these very long durations.
Meanwhile, we saw China dealing with a real-time crisis management scenario in their own human spaceflight program.
Yeah, China had to swiftly send up a replacement spacecraft to retrieve their astronauts. This was due to damage sustained by the initial vehicle while it was in orbit. This incident, which was reported by the global press, just serves as another stark reminder of the inherent risks of putting people in space.
And it really necessitates the rapid execution of crisis management and recovery protocols.
Absolutely. It just underscores the need for redundancy and reliable escape mechanisms in every single spacefaring nation's strategy.
And for the scientists who are running these incredibly expensive experiments in these high-risk environments, protecting their invaluable samples is obviously paramount.
It is, and that's why NASA awarded a contract to the University of Alabama at Birmingham for something called the Lunar Freezer System. Scientific payloads, biological samples, geological cores, chemical experiments, they're often extremely temperature sensitive.
Right, you can't just let them thaw on the way back.
No, this specialized system is designed to safely return those payloads from the moon all the way back to Earth, protecting them from the extreme thermal variations of space transit. It ensures that the integrity of that priceless scientific data is maintained upon arrival.
All right, let's shift our focus outward, far beyond our solar system, to the astonishing revelations coming from the James Webb Space Telescope, the JWST. And once again, it is challenging the very models we use to understand the universe.
The JWST has made another groundbreaking discovery. It's found a remarkably mature spiral galaxy that they've named Alcnanda. What makes this so significant is its age. It seems to exist just 1.5 billion years after the Big Bang.
Okay, and why is the existence of a mature spiral galaxy that early in the universe a problem for cosmology?
Well, it directly challenges the prevailing cosmological framework, which is called the lambda-cold dark matter model, or lambda CDM for short.
That's the standard model of the universe, basically.
It is, and this model dictates the timescale for how structures form in the universe. It suggests that complex, well-formed galaxies with these beautiful, sweeping spiral arms and established stellar populations should have required significantly more time, many billions of years, to assemble and mature.
And Alexander is saying that's wrong.
Alcnanda suggests that galaxy formation happened much, much faster in the early universe than the standard model predicts. So now astronomers are scrambling to adjust their simulations and their theories to account for this incredibly rapid structural growth.
So the universe, in a way, grew up faster than we thought. That's a really fundamental realization.
It is, exactly. The JWST also continued its detailed study of exoplanet chemistry, this time focusing on a planet called WASP 107b. Analyzing the specific chemical signatures in its atmosphere is crucial for understanding how planetary atmospheres evolve, which is, the necessary next step before we can determine the true potential for habitability in these distant worlds.
Before we leave this segment, let's just come back down to Earth for a minute for an amazing intersection of high-tech and ancient history in Peru.
This is a classic case of modern technology unlocking a forgotten history. Using LiDAR technology, that's light detection and ranging, researchers have uncovered hidden settlements and funerary structures belonging to the ancient Chachapoya civilization. This was in the Rio Abiseo National Park in Peru.
For listeners who maybe haven't encountered LiDAR before, can you just briefly explain how it does this?
Sure, LiDAR uses pulses of laser light that are fired from an aircraft to map surfaces. But critically, it can penetrate dense jungle canopy. So where vegetation completely hides structures from your eyes or from traditional satellite views, LiDAR creates a precise 3D map of the ground underneath it all.
So it sees through the trees.
It sees right through the trees. And in the case of the Chachapoya, this revealed their distinct funerary architecture, these towers and mausoleums that they were famous for. It's providing all this new context about their societal organization, their population distribution, and their burial practices that were completely obscured by centuries of jungle growth.
Amazing stuff. Okay, if the first segment was about biological acceleration, this third segment is really all about digital acceleration. Artificial intelligence is now fundamentally restructuring the global economy, and it's being driven by this intense commercial competition.
We saw this on full display at the Amazon Web Services or AWS Re.Invent conference. They launched their Nova model family, 4 new AI models leveraging deep learning. But the really critical commercial announcement was their collaboration with NVIDIA to bring AI factories directly onto enterprise premises.
AI factories. That sounds like a massive industrial commitment.
Yeah.
What does that architecture actually look like for, a standard corporation?
Think of it as a dedicated industrial-grade AI production line. These are bespoke, pre-configured GPU infrastructures that are installed directly on the client's own network. This is so crucial because many businesses, especially in finance or defense, they can't afford to send their proprietary sensitive data out to the public cloud for processing.
It's a security and regulatory nightmare for them.
A total nightmare.
Yeah.
By bringing the AI factory, all that specialized hardware and computing power onto their own premises, AWS is accelerating enterprise adoption while letting them maintain stringent security and compliance. It's making AI ubiquitous, not just something that's cloud dependent.
That's the infrastructure side. But if you look at user adoption and application growth, Asia is clearly leading the field.
Oh, absolutely. Alibaba's Qwen app has just surged. It saw a remarkable 149% increase in monthly active users, or MAUs, globally. This really puts them at the forefront of the consumer AI application race. The Qwen models are these highly robust, large language models, LLMs, that offer multimodal tools for deep research, image generation, and more.
And it shows how quickly this is being integrated outside of North America and Europe.
Exactly. This surge showcases the speed at which powerful, usable AI tools are being integrated into daily life in other regions.
And these astronomical investments in infrastructure are, well, they're no longer just speculative, are they? They are now massive drivers of macroeconomics, particularly in the United States.
There was a recent report with a really staggering finding. Investments in AI infrastructure accounted for up to half of the entire U.S. economic expansion in the first half of 2025.
Half. That's enormous reliance.
It's huge. Companies like NVIDIA, whose valuation has surpassed $5 trillion, are essentially powering a significant portion of the country's GDP growth. The concern analysts are raising, however, is whether this investment boom is sustainable, or if the U.S. economy is currently inflating an AI bubble that's based very heavily on future revenue projections rather than current profits.
And we already seen the impact on traditional labor structures.
We saw HP announce a significant restructuring, cutting up to 6,000 jobs, and this was explicitly part of a strategic initiative to leverage AI for streamlining their internal operations, automating back-office functions, and reducing human resource costs. This just perfectly illustrates the fundamental workforce displacement challenge that's posed by AI adoption.
Even the current market leader, OpenAI, is feeling the heat from this global surge in competition.
Yeah, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman issued what was described as an internal code red memo. And this memo signaled an urgent need to rapidly improve and update their consumer-facing ChatGPT product. The competition from Alibaba, Google, and others is so intense that they're afraid of stagnation.
So even at the very top, you can't rest.
You can't. It underscores the volatility and the blistering speed that's required just to maintain a leadership position in the current AI market.
Right. Let's shift gears from AI models to autonomous mobility, which is transforming urban transportation using a lot of these same technologies.
We're seeing autonomous ride-sharing transition from these small pilot programs to full-scale commercial services. Uber and a company called Avrede just launched a new robotaxi service in Dallas, Texas. It's backed by a significant $375 million investment.
And the goal here is to get commuters to switch over.
The goal is to rapidly transition commuters to what they call transportation as a service, or TA, where these level 4 and level 5 autonomous vehicles become the primary reliable mobility solution in high-density metropolitan areas.
Meanwhile, Waymo is carefully expanding its testing footprint into a new, pretty complex environment.
That's right. Waymo is moving into Philadelphia, Pennsylvania for manual testing of its autonomous vehicles. And Philadelphia presents some unique challenges: narrow streets, unpredictable traffic patterns, really unique urban infrastructure. All of that requires rigorous, real-world data collection before a fully autonomous deployment can be considered safe and effective.
So despite the rush, they're being careful.
It shows that safety protocols are being strictly maintained, especially given some of the technical mishaps we've seen in other cities.
Looking beyond terrestrial travel, we need to touch on the foundational progress being made toward a functional quantum internet.
This is a major breakthrough in networking architecture. The critical obstacle to a quantum internet has always been distance. Specifically, how do you maintain quantum coherence, that incredibly delicate state required for quantum computing over long fiber optic lines?
It's like trying to keep a soap bubble from popping over 100 miles.
That's a great analogy. Researchers have made significant advancements with devices called quantum repeaters. These devices are necessary to sustain the quantum entanglement needed for hypersecure long-distance communication. They're paving the way for a hybrid infrastructure that can handle both the classical internet and a new, ultra-secure quantum data layer.
Let's talk about how AI is integrating into our digital memories. Google is leveraging its Gemini model in a very personalized way.
Right. Google Photos is integrating Gemini AI into its 2025 recap feature. So instead of just getting a list of photos from the year, Gemini will now curate and organize your annual highlights. It'll provide personalized contextual insights.
Like what?
For example, it might automatically create a montage of your travels, or it could recognize the top 3 people you took selfies with. It's designed to make digital memory organization far more reflective and less, transactional.
And Spotify is bringing social listening into the mix.
Spotify launched Wrapped Party, which is its first multiplayer feature. It's designed to create a social, real-time listening experience, allowing users to share their musical histories and preferences in a communal, simultaneous environment. It's another step in integrating these tech platforms into our shared social lives.
Moving to policy and privacy, there is a massive clash looming between a national government security mandate and a tech giant's core business model.
We're talking about the privacy clash between the Indian government and Apple. The government of India has mandated that all smartphones sold in the country must include a government-backed app called Sanchar Sathi.
And the stated purpose of this app is cyber fraud prevention.
Cyber fraud prevention and tracking lost phones. That's the official line.
But I'm guessing the devil is in the details of the app's capabilities.
Precisely. The Sanchar Sathi app has extensive data collection and monitoring capabilities that fundamentally conflict with Apple's very stringent end-to-end encryption and user privacy policies. This is core to their brand.
The stakes here are immense.
They are. If Apple resists this mandate, it risks major implications for its rapidly growing Indian market operations. They could potentially be forced out or severely restricted. This conflict just highlights the increasing tension we're seeing worldwide between national surveillance and data sovereignty interests on one side and corporate privacy standards on the other.
On a much more positive note, regarding our personal technology use, the benefits of a digital detox are now scientifically confirmed.
Yeah, a study confirmed that cutting back on social media use for just 1 week significantly improves mood and measurably reduces symptoms of anxiety and depression, particularly in young adults. It really substantiates the idea that even brief, intentional breaks from that constant digital connectivity can drastically alleviate mental stress and improve general well-being.
And finally, a huge step toward making our healthcare data actually usable and liquid across different platforms.
Android 16 is integrating the capability for applications to read and write medical data in the FHIR format. FHIR stands for Fast Healthcare Interoperability Resources. It's the industry standard for electronically exchanging healthcare information.
And why is this such a monumental step?
Because it allows all these diverse electronic health record systems and apps to communicate user health data seamlessly and securely. For decades, getting your data from one hospital to another or from your doctor to an app on your phone has been a huge roadblock. This is a major leap toward cohesive, interoperable, digital health management.
Okay, as rapidly as technology accelerates, the human impulse toward conflict remains a constant. Our focus now turns to global geopolitics, which are defined by escalating military action and severe diplomatic fractures.
We have to start with the escalating military rhetoric between the United States and Venezuela. President Donald Trump confirmed that U.S. military strikes inside Venezuela will begin soon, and they will be specifically targeting alleged narco-terrorists operating in the Caribbean.
This is a major escalation of military engagement in that region.
It is, and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth added to the severity of the news by claiming that U.S. military operations have already resulted in over 80 fatalities among suspected traffickers. The U.S. justification for this relies heavily on national security claims, linking these operations directly to the protection of U.S. borders and interests.
But the actions on the ground have already generated immense controversy and very serious allegations of potential war crimes against the defense secretary himself.
And this is where we have to apply really critical scrutiny. There are serious allegations that Secretary Hegseth may have ordered a second strike against the survivors of an initial boat attack.
A second strike on survivors.
Yes, and critics in Congress and international legal bodies are arguing that intentionally targeting survivors constitutes an extrajudicial killing, which could be a potential violation of international law regarding the treatment of non-combatants or those seeking assistance.
So, strategically, the administration's defense has been that the second strike was aimed at destroying the drug boat itself, not at executing the crew. But doesn't that defense kind of sidestep the fundamental legal issue of ensuring non-combatant survival, particularly if they were already disabled in the water?
It does. Intent is absolutely critical in international law. While destroying a known narcotics vessel is a legitimate military objective, if survivors were present, legal doctrine mandates that you provide aid or at least secure their safety. The defense of "we were just destroying the boat" doesn't fully negate the legal concern that human life may have been disregarded.
So there's pressure for more evidence.
Immense pressure. The administration needs to release evidence, aerial surveillance, satellite footage, something to clearly prove the intent of that second strike. This is going to be an intense legal battle that will be watched globally.
And in stark contrast to this military aggression, Pope Leo urged the Trump administration to halt military action, advocating for a diplomatic path.
The Pope called for a shift toward dialogue and utilizing economic pressure, arguing these are more peaceful and potentially more effective long-term means to address Venezuela's crisis. He specifically linked the instability caused by military action to the exacerbation of the regional migration crisis, advocating for a more compassionate approach.
It's a major diplomatic push against U.S. interventionism.
A huge one, especially in Latin America.
Speaking of immigration and rhetoric, President Trump used a recent cabinet meeting to express some extremely inflammatory sentiments about specific immigrant groups.
He did. During that high-profile meeting, President Trump openly stated he did not want Somalis in the United States, and he referred to them as garbage. This targeted, divisive rhetoric against the Somali American community, which particularly impacts states like Minnesota, immediately drew fierce condemnation from civil rights groups and progressive organizations.
Who labeled the comments racially motivated.
And dangerous. It just underscores this ongoing, very raw national debate about immigration policy and political rhetoric.
Moving to the Middle East, the Israeli-Palestinian crisis continues to be marked by displacement and severe humanitarian impacts.
The Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF, launched Operation Iron Wall in the West Bank town of Tubas. They cited intelligence on increased militant activity in the area. The reports detailing the aftermath are staggering. This single operation led to the displacement of over 40,000 Palestinians.
40,000.
That figure represents the highest number of displaced persons recorded in the West Bank since the 1967 occupation. The scale of this displacement is generating severe international concern about the growing humanitarian crisis.
And the scrutiny over accountability continues to escalate, and it's being amplified by video evidence emerging from the region.
Video footage from Jenin has sparked significant international outrage. The footage appears to show IDF troops killing 2 Palestinian men who were attempting to surrender with their arms raised.
Which has fueled immediate accusations of extrajudicial killings.
And war crimes. Compounding this, French journalists' unions have now filed a lawsuit against Israel, arguing that the severe obstruction of media access in both Gaza and the West Bank violates press freedom and the public's right to information regarding these events.
The ceasefire remains incredibly fragile. That's evident in the disputes over access to crossing points and the transfer of remains.
There was a lot of tension following the transfer by Hamas of the presumptive remains of a deceased hostage to the International Committee of the Red Cross, the ICRC. However, Israeli officials publicly noted that the partial remains that were returned did not match the 2 hostages who are believed to still be alive and held in Gaza.
And the Rafah crossing is still a major point of contention.
It is. Egypt firmly refuted claims that it had agreed with Israel to open the crossing solely for Gazans to exit. They insist that any new protocol must allow for travel in both directions, which is essential for aid to get in and for returning refugees.
Finally, let's turn to the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, where diplomatic efforts seem to be completely paralyzed by Russia's confidence in its military success.
In Moscow, President Vladimir Putin used recent talks to firmly reject any proposals for compromise. He is maintaining full confidence in Russia's eventual military success. And this defiance contrasts so sharply with drone footage that's revealing the catastrophic devastation in towns like Myrnarod in Ukraine's eastern Donetsk region.
Which is now almost completely encircled.
Almost completely encircled and reportedly devastated by heavy Russian bombardment. The human cost is undeniably high, despite the confidence coming from Moscow.
The European Union's plan to fund Ukraine is also creating significant division among its own member states.
The EU proposed a really complex financial mechanism, a loan backed by the estimated 140 billion euros in frozen Russian sovereign assets. The idea is to use the future profits from those assets to guarantee the loan.
But that met strong opposition.
Very strong opposition, most notably from Belgian Prime Minister Bart de Wever. He called the underlying belief that Ukraine could defeat Russia and compel Moscow to pay reparations a complete illusion. Belgium is advocating for a shared burden across all EU member states rather than relying on what they see as a highly uncertain outcome.
And the conflict's reach is expanding, affecting global maritime security through attacks on Russia's oil shadow fleet.
Right. The shadow fleet is Russia's network of often older, uninsured tankers that it uses to circumvent sanctions and transport its oil globally. A Turkish-owned tanker, which had previously been documented at a Russian port, was damaged off the coast of Senegal in West Africa.
So far from the conflict zone.
Very far. It's attributed to ongoing actions against this fleet. While Ukraine hasn't formally claimed responsibility, the incident clearly demonstrates the global reach of this maritime conflict and its potential to disrupt global shipping and oil markets.
Okay, the financial landscape seems to reflect these pressure points from geopolitics and rising costs. We are seeing severe economic strain, particularly among lower-income earners in the United States.
The depth of the U.S. affordability crisis is really laid bare by recent banking reports. A Bank of America Institute report showed that nearly 24% of American households are living paycheck to paycheck. But the crucial detail is that they are allocating an astonishing 95% of their income just to essential expenses.
95%. So things like childcare, housing, groceries.
That's it. There's nothing left. And that financial precarity is aggravated by the housing crisis. Nationally, there's a deficit of 7.3 million affordable rental homes available for extremely low-income renters. The combination of high interest rates, inflation, and stagnant wage growth is making stable, affordable housing just increasingly difficult for millions.
It creates a foundational instability in the economy.
It really does.
Meanwhile, President Trump's proposal for a U.S. Sovereign Wealth Fund, or SWF, it appears to be non-viable under traditional funding models. It's facing significant hurdles due to the current fiscal situation.
The viability of establishing a U.S. SWF is, well, it's highly questionable, given the staggering federal budget deficit. Traditional sovereign wealth funds are capitalized using things like oil and gas revenues, massive trade surpluses, or budget surpluses, none of which the U.S. currently has.
Right.
So despite the administration issuing an executive order nearly 10 months ago, the proposal still lacks any adequately defined funding sources. It really highlights the immense fiscal challenges. Interestingly, Trump is also reportedly exploring an Australian-style mandatory retirement savings program, which would be a massive structural shift in how Americans save for retirement.
Moving to corporate challenges, even giants in the aerospace sector are not immune to quality control setbacks.
Airbus announced a cut in its delivery targets for its very popular A320 aircraft. This cut is directly attributable to newly identified quality issues with fuselage panels, and this comes after earlier reports of software glitches. The challenge here is the ripple effect. This impacts production schedules globally, putting immense pressure on the entire aerospace supply chain.
And it raises questions about quality assurance.
It raises serious questions about quality assurance when you're under such relentless production demand.
On the retail front, Macy's is showing some signs of an internal recovery, but it remains pretty cautious about the broader consumer landscape.
Under its new CEO, Macy's reported its strongest quarterly growth in over 3 years, which was a surprise for many analysts, and it led to them raising their annual sales forecast. However, the company is still striking a deeply cautious tone about the upcoming holiday season. They are factoring in significant uncertainties about consumer spending trends.
Because they know the average American wallet is stretched incredibly thin.
Exactly. They're looking at the same Bank of America report we are.
We also saw a significant market correction in the tech acquisition space, specifically involving the event ticketing giant Eventbrite.
Bending Spoons, which is a major app developer, has agreed to purchase Eventbrite for $500 million. This acquisition represents a dramatic devaluation from Eventbrite's $1.76 billion initial public offering, or IPO, valuation back in 2018.
The pandemic just decimated the events market.
It was decimated, and while it's recovering, this acquisition underscores the brutal reality of market corrections for companies that failed to adapt quickly enough. Bending Spoons is betting they can revitalize the stalled brand.
And major U.S. companies are in a race against the clock to secure refunds related to previous tariff policies.
Yeah, companies like Costco and other massive importers are actively engaged in some very complex litigation. They're attempting to secure billions of dollars in refunds for the tariffs that were imposed by the Trump administration, and they're racing against an impending court ruling. This massive effort really highlights the significant financial strain those tariff policies placed on U.S. businesses and, ultimately, the additional costs that were passed down to consumers.
Looking internationally, China is facing some major structural economic headwinds, starting with a significant investment slowdown.
China's Fixed Asset Investment, or FAI, which measures spending on manufacturing, infrastructure, and real estate, it fell sharply by 1.7% year-on-year in the latest reporting period.
And that downturn is a symptom of bigger problems.
It's highly symptomatic of broader structural issues. Massive industrial overcapacity, rising youth unemployment, and profound instability in their property market. President Xi Jinping's strategic efforts to reduce that industrial overcapacity are now having a direct negative impact on their traditional growth metrics.
The Eurozone is also under warning. The European Commission has issued a warning about significant fiscal sustainability risks in its member states.
Right, and what's driving this risk? Is it just the debt that was accrued during the pandemic?
I was going to ask.
It's more complex now. While the COVID debt certainly lingers, the pressure is being driven by elevated government spending, particularly the predicted surge in defense spending across the continent because of geopolitical instability. You couple that with varying economic recovery trajectories, and it gets messy. The Commission is essentially flagging that the balance between necessary sovereign investment and responsible debt management is becoming highly precarious for several key Eurozone economies.
And finally, a long-term demographic drag is set to severely impact the GDP of massive economies in both Europe and Asia.
A study from the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, the EBRD, delivered a very sobering warning. It said the combination of aging populations and persistently declining birth rates is projected to significantly reduce annual GDP growth and severely crimp living standards in both Europe and China by 2050.
It's a simple numbers game.
It is. Fewer working-age individuals means reduced productivity, a smaller tax base to support social programs, and increased healthcare burdens. It's going to necessitate massive and probably painful policy adjustments starting now.
We turn now to the volatile world of domestic and international governance, where political maneuvering and legal accountability are front and center.
President Trump made a very surprising and controversial political move this week. He pardoned two figures from opposite ends of the political spectrum, and it sparked this intense debate about his motives.
Right, he announced pardons for Democratic Representative Henry Cuellar of Texas, who was facing a bribery indictment, and also for the former Honduran president Juan Orlando Hernandez, who was convicted of drug trafficking in the United States.
The pardon of Representative Cuellar is particularly controversial. It really appears to be a strategic intervention into a legal case involving a member of the opposing party. And it raises serious questions about the use of presidential power to influence legal outcomes for, political advantage.
Yeah, the Hernandez part.
That one underscores the complex intersection of U.S. legal authority and bilateral relations, especially concerning drug violence in Central America. Analysts are questioning whether these decisions prioritize political strategy over the integrity of the justice system itself.
Adding a unique layer of corporate influence, the CEO of Dell made an enormous financial commitment that's tied directly to the president's branding.
Dell's CEO Michael Dell, along with his wife, pledged $6.25 billion to create what are being called Trump accounts for American children.
$6.25 billion.
It's a massive philanthropic initiative aimed at promoting financial literacy and investment, and it could potentially provide each child with a substantial sum of seed capital. This move is a very high-profile blend of corporate philanthropy aimed at a societal benefit, but it's intertwined with very specific political branding right ahead of an election cycle.
Which naturally draws scrutiny about that corporate political relationship. The Republican Party is also dealing with significant internal fracturing, and it was showcased by a very public and heated feud between two high-profile members.
This was a rare open conflict. It was between Representative Elise Stefanik, who's a key party figure, and the House Speaker Mike Johnson. The feud erupted over a provision in the defense bill related to the 2016 Russia probe.
And Stefanik publicly accused him of lying.
She did. She accused Johnson of lying and of obstructing her provision from advancing. This is significant because it just showcases these deep, persistent internal divisions within the Republican caucus, and it highlights the immense challenges that Johnson faces in maintaining control and party unity.
And we have a major legislative proposal that would fundamentally change who can claim U.S. citizenship status, a move that is certain to face legal challenges.
Senator Bernie Moreno has introduced the Exclusive Citizenship Act of 2025. If this bill were to pass, it would mandate that all dual citizens, and we're talking about potentially millions of Americans, including high-profile business figures and political spouses, must renounce their foreign nationality within 1 year to maintain their U.S. citizenship.
That seems entirely unconstitutional, doesn't it? Based on the 14th Amendment.
Legal analysts all agree that it faces immense constitutional hurdles. The 14th Amendment protects citizens from losing their citizenship without their consent, and forcing them to renounce a foreign one is seen as an extreme measure. The bill aligns with a broader trend towards stricter nationalistic policies, but its path through the courts, if it even passes, would be fraught with challenges.
Shifting to international law, the European Union is reeling from some serious corruption charges that have been brought against a former top official.
The former EU foreign policy chief, Federica Mogherini, has been formally charged with procurement fraud, corruption, and conflict of interest. These charges come from the European Public Prosecutor's Office, or EPPO.
And it's important to define what the EPPO is.
It is. It's the Independent Public Prosecution Office of the European Union. And the specifics of the charges against Mogherini relate to alleged irregularities in the awarding of a program contract to the College of Europe while she was serving as vice president of the European Commission.
So this is a huge deal for institutional accountability.
It's a crucial case. It highlights the persistent risks of corruption, even within the highest echelons of European institutions, and it underscores the EPPO's commitment to holding them accountable.
In Central America, the Honduran presidential election remains tight, with the centrist candidate currently widening his lead.
The centrist, Salvador Nasrallah, has broadened his margin over the Trump-backed right-wing candidate, Missouri Esfera. This followed an initially reported technical tie that drew some sharp criticism from the U.S. president. The close race just reflects the deep political tensions in the country, especially given prior U.S. threats to cut aid if the election results were deemed to have been tampered with.
We also saw a significant diplomatic realignment focused on security between Germany and the United Kingdom.
German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier made a state visit to the United Kingdom. This was the first by a German president in 27 years.
27 years. That's a monumental diplomatic gesture.
It is. The focus of the meetings, which included King Charles III and Prime Minister Keir Starmer, centered intensely on strengthening security ties and military aid for Ukraine. It clearly signals a post-Brexit realignment, cementing closer European security collaboration outside of the formal EU structure.
Finally, let's look at two stark examples of governance and civil discontent, starting with the tragic fire and the security response in Hong Kong.
A devastating fire in a Hong Kong housing complex resulted in at least 159 deaths. This triggered an immediate and very severe national security crackdown by Beijing. The official response involved accusations that external hostile forces were exploiting the tragedy to stir up chaos.
So they're using the disaster as justification.
It suggests that Beijing is strategically using it as a justification to further suppress public dissent, increase surveillance, and control the narrative right in the middle of a public safety crisis.
You contrast that swift crackdown with the shocking display of, well, medieval justice enacted by the Taliban.
The Taliban carried out a public execution in front of approximately 80,000 people in Afghanistan. The convicted man, Mangal Talakan, was shot by the young son of the man he was convicted of killing. This happened after the boy refused the option to pardon him.
This is barbaric.
This public act, detailed in global press reports, drew immediate and widespread international condemnation. It highlights the severe regression of human rights and justice under the Taliban's rule.
On a more modern front, youth engagement is now driving significant political protests in Bulgaria, and they're effectively circumventing traditional media.
Mass protests have erupted in Bulgaria, and they're being organized primarily by Generation Z, leveraging social media platforms for rapid mobilization. They're voicing grievances against a controversial government budget and widespread corruption.
And it marks a shift away from state media.
A significant shift. They're moving away from reliance on traditional state-controlled media, which many young Bulgarians now deeply distrust. Social media has effectively become the primary political communication channel for change in that region.
And lastly, a call for a new law in the UK to promote public safety against sexually motivated crime.
Following a detailed public report on the prevention of sexually motivated crimes, the aunt of Zara Alina has called for a new law that would establish a duty to act when witnessing someone in danger. This initiative aims to legally mandate bystanders to intervene, or at the very least, report dangerous situations.
So it's about fostering a cultural shift toward collective responsibility.
Exactly, to protect vulnerable individuals in public spaces.
Wow. This deep dive has spanned so many extremes today. I mean, we've explored the breathtaking potential to add decades to the human lifespan through genetic and biological intervention. And at the same time, we're tracking the rapid rise of artificially intelligent systems that are powerful enough to drive half of a national economy.
It's a moment of really profound juxtaposition. We are accelerating scientifically while at the same time we're really struggling ethically. We covered the intense scrutiny regarding accountability, from high-profile EU officials like Federica Mogherini facing charges of procurement fraud, all the way to the U.S. military facing these intense international legal questions over its conduct in the Caribbean.
The world is changing at an incomprehensible speed.
And yet our geopolitical and our ethical challenges remain fundamentally human and, in some ways, unchanged.
And that really brings us back to the biggest question that's looming over all of this technological acceleration, especially in AI. Given that scientists are actively working to integrate these sophisticated emotional frameworks into AI models that are capable of simulating or, maybe even genuinely processing emotion, we have to ask ourselves,
It's the big one.
if they succeed, what intrinsic right or value does a biological human possess that an artificial emotional intelligence should not? And how exactly will we, as a global society, decide who is entitled to rights and ethical consideration in the 21st century?
I think that decision will be the defining ethical challenge of our future.
I think you're right. We've given you a lot to process today, from the genetic code all the way to the cosmos. Thank you for diving deep with us.
For enjoying Artificially Informed.
Hit subscribe and share it with a friend.
From the left, the right, and straight from the algorithm.
Thank you.
That's it for today's Artificially Informed.
Nope. Thanks for spending your time with us.
Yeah.
Stay sharp, stay curious. See you next time.